who've used a bar's safe word or secret drink to escape a bad date. What happened? And how did the staff handle it? Story 1. In a time before the safe word existed, I was on a terrible first date at a bar. The guy was super handsy and wouldn't stop touching me. I excused myself to the washroom and an angel of a bartender came down to check on me. She had noticed I looked uncomfortable and asked if I needed help. I said yes and she left and told the guy to pay his tab and leave because the date was over. She was a legend. Story 2. It's not the same thing, but one time when I worked at a convenience store, a regular walked in and asked me to walk out to the car with her because her ex-boyfriend was outside and wouldn't leave her alone. I gladly did it. I was the only guy at the store. But I'm sure the guy laughed to himself when he seen my 53 scrawny escorting his ex to the car. He tried to talk to her, and I got in between them and told him to leave, or I'd call the cops. He left peacefully and quickly, so that was the end of it for me. Edit. Just wanted to say thank you for all the kind comments and awards. I appreciate the compliments. Story 3. Was out with a couple of friends and one had brought along a lad she barely knew and was essentially a rebound. He was a creep, was trying to put his hands down her pants and up her top in the middle of the restaurant. Yes, a actual restaurant. At 6 p.m., so certainly wasn't quiet. She told him no and stopped repeatedly, but he wouldn't and was just telling me to fuck scoffins mind my business. When my friends went to the toilet ands, he went for a smoke, I went to the bar, asked if Eileen was working as my friend needs help. The lad knew what I meant, sent a female staff member to the toilets, radioed the doorman who came over and told the lad he was out of control and needed to leave. The lad threw a punch at the doorman, called me a ferret, then was dragged outside by 2 large doormen. Police were called and no idea what happened after that. Couldn't have been handled any better. Edit to add this was at a Weatherspoons. Thought edit for some positive story since it gets a lot of negative attention. Story 4. Went on a first date with a guy I met online. I'm 22, he was 38, which I figured might be fine. Until he started immediately going on about how girls my age are way more grateful and how he prefers women who haven't been ruined by bad relationships. He kept leaning in way too close, saying he liked how innocent I looked, and then casually started rubbing my thigh under the table while talking about how soft and obedient I seemed. I froze. It was that gross kind of touch where you don't want to make a scene, but your whole body's screaming to get away. I excused myself to go to the loo, walked past the bar, and quietly asked the bartender if Angela was working tonight. He just nodded and said, "Right this way." Within a minute, a female staff member found me by the bathrooms and said someone was waiting for me outside. They walked me out the back, stayed with me while I ordered a cab, and made sure I was safe. He texted me the next day saying he hoped I'd learn to be more polite. Immediately blocked and reported. Story 5. Oh, this happened to me, but not the way you think. The wife and I thought it'd be fun to try the OL roleplay of pick me up in the bar thing. Smooth me. Ordered her a drink from across the bar. She eventually came over and we chatted a bit, and as we were starting to leave, the bartender checked to make sure she was okay with me leaving with her. Yeah, he's my husband. He just has shitty game. Respected that bartender, though. Story 6. Serious question. Is there a different safe word for every bar or just a generally understood statement and serious look? I've heard some places have drinks that are ordered as a code too. Story 7. I didn't use a safe word, but years ago in Austin, a girlfriend and I were out. We were at the bar but facing the stage to watch live music. There was a mirror behind the bar, and as I was half turned to talk to her, I noticed an old man behind her lean in to sniff her hair. I did a double take, he noticed, so he started to pretend he was leaning in to chat with her. The bartender saw, wrote me a note asking if we needed his help. I shook my head yes. Not even a minute later, he rounded the bar, grabbed the guy by the shoulder. I think the ladies want to be left alone and made him leave. Edit Lamio. Excuse me. Nodded my head. Yes. Reddit give me a break. I was in the middle of baking cookies when I decided to reply to this second edit, okay guys? I posted the cookies. Story 8. Sorry, this is almost tiredly unrelated, but I did have to grab a coworker of mine mid-sentence when she was talking to a dude to pull her away and make up a lie about how it's an emergency. I worked with a girl who is, for lack of a better word, incredibly stupid. Stupid in a cute way, like a Disney character who is just all smiles and a complete, very sweet and a talented athlete and artist, but just like the type of girl who'd try to order Uber Eats on a camping trip and not understand why that isn't a thing. Anyway, so some random dude comes into the bar one day. My spider senses immediately perked up when he approached the bar without sitting down and asked if another female bartender was working right now. The girl said no, she doesn't work these shifts. Usually the guy then asked her if she knew when she was working. My coworker was literally just about to give some stranger another coworker's regular schedule, so I grabbed her to tell her she's needed immediately in the kitchen. Once we were out of earshot, I told her never to give the regular hours or personal information of other servers to strangers. She kinda rolled her eyes and was like, "What's the big deal?" I then asked if she considered why that guy didn't sit to have a drink. Why does he want to know her shifts? I've never seen him before. She has a boyfriend. Use your head. Anyway, that was a good teaching moment. I returned to the customer to ask him if I could take a message. He said, "Nah, it's fine. Just come back." At which point I said, "Please don't." He gulped and walked out. I asked the girl he was looking for if she knew who he was, and she said yes. He was a creepy dude who tried to get her number one time, and she told him to off, so he somehow worked out where she worked. Never tell people your schedule. My manager had to do this. Poor lass was being stalked by her ex, and she asked if Angela was working. He said of course, and took her upstairs to meet her until the cops arrived to deal with the guy. The second worst part is, it's so lucky he was trained for that because none of the rest of us were trained at all. Despite there being posters around the building that literally said staff were specially trained to help victims who ask for Angela, I would have known, and many of my women co-workers probably did, but not because we were trained for it, and she got so lucky she ran into the right person. I don't know what happened to her after that, but I hope she's safe and well. Story 9. I went to a queer kink event and took too many gummies and ended up having a panic attack. I was in a state, crying, telling my friends they could stay. I would leave. Their responses made me cry even more as they were like, "There will be more parties. We just want to make sure you're okay." So we're all leaving, cue me crying harder. A security guard came up to us and asked me if I needed Angela, and that made me burst out laughing mid-panic attack. I said no, these are my friends. He said that he just needed to make sure I'm not being forced to do anything due to the nature of the event, which made me smile. It's a fond memory of mine with my two friends. Lesson learned, don't go to a kink event high off gummies. Nice to know that security guards are looking out for us. Story 10. As a person who is behind the bar and dealt with this a few times, my main goals are make the woman feel safe and get the guy away without damaging his ego. Do I really care about his ego? No, but outcomes are much better if he doesn't go nuclear in establishment, and likely better later when staff's collective muscle isn't available to woman for defense. If he takes rejection with dignity, way safer than if he is plotting revenge outside. Sometimes we sneak girl out employee-only area to exit. Sometimes we just keep the separate. Up to the female how she feels best about it. Story 11. I'm in Canada, and some of the bars or popular hangout pub grub places have an angel shot instruction sheet in all the girls' bathroom stalls. Crappy it has to exist, but so thankful for it. Story 12. My question with this, and the reason I'd be hesitant to use it myself, has always been how it's supposed to be a discrete code word. Things like, "As for Angela" are advertised in every venue and on social media. If you know what it means, why wouldn't the creep you're trying to escape? Story 13. Not quite the same, but I've had to do something similar. Once for a friend who had to pretend I was her boyfriend, or this creepy drunk guy would try to grind on her at a club. And another time, a random woman at a streetcar stop after bar hours asked me to sit beside her on the streetcar because drunk guy wouldn't leave her alone. Story 14. Honestly, I didn't know there was something like a safe word at bars and such. I can completely understand why. Some people are super creeps. Several years ago, my wife and I and several of our friends went to a favorite spot of ours for some drinks and dancing. We had been there for about 10 minutes and we were patiently waiting in the lineup to get some drinks at the bar. That was when I noticed a young lady whose general disposition to a young man was very uncomfortable as he was leaning over her, holding her arm and talking at her and obviously creeping her out. I looked at my wife, who hadn't noticed what's up, and told her to hang on. There was something I had to do, although I was pretty nervous. I'm not a confrontational person. I didn't know how this was going to play out, but I had to try, so I walked up to her, gently placed my hand on her back, and with a big smile said, "Hey babe, I'm so sorry. I'm late. We got caught up at some guy's name's house and I finally got here. I'm so sorry." Then I turned to the guy and looked to her and asked, "Hey, who's this?" And I introduced myself and stuck out my hand. The guy instantly backed off and mumbled some, and left her alone for the rest of the night. I introduced myself to her and told her to come find me, or some staff members if the creep approached her again, which he didn't, and I went on my merry way. She and her friends seemed to have a good time afterwards, and they approached me later to thank me for stepping in. I'm glad I was there, I'm glad I was aware, and am glad I had to step in and get him to step off. I don't know if her situation would have escalated, but thankfully we will never have to find out. So, hey guys, gals, whoever is reading this, if you see someone in a situation like this, take the chance and step up to help them out. Worst case is, if you're wrong, you might look like a thoughtful idiot, but there is no harm in trying to help. Story 15. Girl in late-night restaurant bar didn't look good, like she was either totally drunk or drugged. I spoke to staff about getting in touch with Angela and sending her the girl's way. Doorman had a word with her and the guy she was with. The chap got mouthy, so was taken outside. Couple of doormen slapped him around for a bit. They found a syringe with some liquid on him and a bottle of something with a pipette. The guy wouldn't explain what the liquids were. Police were called. Other patrons were hearing that this guy might have drugged some, also tried to give him a kicking, albeit failed, while some other women also tried to get attention by saying he had also drugged them, or tried, even though they had come in after he and the original girl had. Story 16. Guy was groping girls, and all I did was point to the guy to the bartender who knew me, and said, "This guy." Big bartender said no, and had him by his scruff pretty quick. Mine had a button in the bathrooms you'd push, and staff would come in, and you to the back office to pay, then out the back door to your car or Uber. I overheard some lady taking to her friend about how she uses it to skip the lines. Staff knew her on site, and it was awkward half hiding in my stall listening in, but they still came and seemed professional about it. Story 17. Somewhat unrelated, a buddy and I are out for drinks and two people are clearly on a date on the stools next to us. She goes to the bathroom and a minute later my friend elbows me and points at the ladies' glass where a pill is dissolving. We had a discreet discussion about the best way to deal with this. Take him outside and beat the hit out of him or tell the bartender. We told the bartender and she quickly tossed the drink and went to meet the woman in the bathroom before 86ing the guy. Woman was terrified, and there was no calling the cops because the pill was gone at that point. Down the drain. I've never been much of a fighter, but still wished we'd hurt that guy. Story 18. I'm a mid-60s dad. If a young woman comes up to me and says, "Hi, uncle, granddad, or mister," you bet I'll her to her car or wherever she needs to be safely. I have daughters. It's dad code 101. Story 19. Not quite a safe word situation, but an advisory tale in a bar where someone was being a creep to a friend. She was wearing a very low-cut top, so he thought that was an invitation to snap some pictures from the next table over for his collection without asking. Gross. I advised him, without swearing or threats of violence, that this wasn't acceptable and he would have to delete the photos. His friend decided to try and play the big man. Fortunately, he must have drunk enough not to immediately see the fact they were outnumbered 2-12, so they swiftly realized this was a non-starter. I went to the bar to cool off because I was definitely in a fighting mood at that point. And let's be honest, that's never a good time anywhere with a large amount of glassware. No matter how much of a tough guy you want to tell yourself you are, someone's getting hurt and it might be someone you care about. So why risk it? Even if you dish out some damage, you're risking catching a charge. At the bar, a friend asked the score and I filled them in. They're up for a fight. I say let's leave it, but at this point the bar staff overheard. They're obviously annoyed people are having fighting talk in their premises. So I fill them in on exactly why I'm giving the situation a 20th distance to avoid being the problem. Turns out, however, dive bars staffed by women really don't like creeps. I've never seen so many baseball bats pulled so quick. A very short conversation was had by the staff with the creep and his pal. A camera was smashed. They were ejected immediately after. I was told very firmly if there was ever a next time, tell the staff first and let them handle it. TLDR, women who work dive bars can very swiftly be the FO portion of the FAFO equation. Don't be a hero if someone's being a creep. Just talk to the staff straight from the jump and let them do their job. Unless you're in a real hole, the staff aren't going to let that sort of thing happen on their watch. If you're in a bar and can't see a single person on staff who you think they might help me out in a tight spot, don't drink there. Story 20. Just FYI, in America, most bartenders will recognize an angel shot as a call for help. If you need it, don't hesitate. Never had anyone order one from me or my former staff, but it's fairly ubiquitous from my experience. Story 21. These two girls just straight up told me, "Hey, this guy has been bothering us." "Oh, why didn't you say anything?" "We tried to get your attention, but you were busy." "I apologize." "Well, get this guy out of here, now." The other bartenders and I convinced him to leave. I bought the ladies some drinks for the trouble. Story 22. It started off like any other awkward first date small talk, drinks, nothing too weird. But halfway through, he leaned in, smiled, and said, "If you ever ghost me, just remember, I'm really good at finding people." My stomach dropped. I laughed it off, excused myself, and went to the bar. Told the bartender I needed an angel shot with a twist. He didn't even blink, just gave me a quiet nod and walked away. A minute later, security showed up and asked the guy to step outside. Turns out he had a knife on him. I still don't know what would have happened if the staff hadn't stepped in, but they handled it like pros. I went home shaken, but safe. Story 23. I work as a DJ and I have a few success stories. My fave is texting a picture from the booth of a guy to security, then watching that guy get calmly escorted out 30 seconds later. Followed closely by that time I was in a much more visible booth, and while the other DJ was up, I just sort of stood in the booth watching an obvious creep circle the dance floor before he saw me, and just walked out. Other DJ says I Jedi mind tricked him into leaving. Story 24. Not quite the same thing, but am a guy who doesn't care about publicly shaming creeps. No secret drinks, no code words, I will name and shame them. So a few years ago, I started putting together outings for people who were vaccinated in NYC and wanting to start going out again. I had run a few of these off of RN Weiss meetups and got to the point where I threw a follow-up for people who had been to one of my previous outings and one or two newbies. Vax cards were confirmed before going. We all went to a restaurant and I noticed that one of the new guys is taking an interest in the woman next to him. So I observe while chatting with other people down at my end of the table. The moment I saw him put his hand on her thigh and her unsure or how to react, I loudly go, "Hey Ryan, buddy." We keep our hands to ourselves, okay? Put both hands on the table where I can see them and keep them there. He was good for another few minutes, but then he did it again. So I go, "I told you to keep your hands off her. Now you leave. Get up, I'll cover your tab." He tries to make excuses and insists on paying to give himself more time to make excuses, but I just go, "I'm serious. Leave and don't ever do that again. That's not acceptable ever." He slinks off and we continue with our night. As soon as I got home, I reported his real name and username to the mods of the subreddit, and they tell me that he matched the description of a prior Ryan that they had gotten complaints about for a Central Park meetup, but they never had his username. Luckily, because I was doing vax vetting on these people beforehand, I had way too much information on him, and had even more because he insisted on Venmoing me. Ryan, wherever you are I hope you've learned to keep your hands to yourself. Story 25. Not quite what you're looking for, but me and my friends have code pineapple. If someone texts you the word pineapple, you immediately call them and make up a reason for them to leave. I've done it when dates have gotten creepy, and a friend once pineappled me to get him out of continuing to drink with his old army buddies. Story 26. Must admit I thought it was a gimmick, like gambling companies telling you they can help you stop, or smoking companies pretending they want to help you to quit. I'm glad it worked out for you. What a manipulative creep that guy was. I've been watching the Epstein documentary with my wife. That behavior is quite similar to what he used to do to try and lure girls into increasingly depraved acts before their flight senses triggered. Well done, all involved in your case. Story 27. Had a stranger come up to me while I was reading outside an otherwise empty coffee shop. I'm a very petite woman living solo, so I went into a nearby restaurant as I didn't want to walk home and have him follow me. He did, however, follow me to the restaurant and plop down at my table as if we were on a date. My waitress didn't take me seriously until I cried while he was at the bar. He wound up shoving his way into the kitchen yelling about how he couldn't find his girl and got aggressive with them. I ended up being hidden in a storage room waiting to be taken home while the waitstaff called police for trespassing. All in all, a 5-star experience, but all of the women who yanked me out were very kind. I'm a firm believer more places should have a safe word system. Story 28. As someone who's worked in several bars across the years in the UK, I've seen this be used a few times. Our protocol differed a little from each place, but the general standard was to immediately take the person back to a private space and ask for details, show we could help. It didn't matter how busy it was drilled into all staff to take this seriously. Usually, we would inform door staff if we had them, and/or get the person escorted to a taxi by doorman or a member of staff. When I later trained staff for a new bar, I made sure they all knew how important these protocols were. To people on the other side of the bar, us bar staff pay attention. Your safety is important and don't be afraid to use the safety tools or talk to us if you need help. Story 29. I've had several women essentially grab hold of me and tell some rando that I was their boyfriend. I've been told that I have a fairly intimidating face upon first meeting somebody. I have PTSD, so I think that's just a byproduct of that. It's definitely not a conscious decision to look like. I'm constantly ready to somebody up. It's a bit annoying to know that my face is often telling people to stay away when that couldn't be further from who I am. But I'm happy to use it in those situations. Thankfully, none of those situations have escalated beyond me needing to raise my voice. Story 30. Didn't use a code phrase, but I was having pizza in a small park. Like you can see the whole thing at once. As I'm sitting, this guy comes up and starts talking to me, and I'm very uninterested. I started saying a bunch of stuff that I thought would turn him off, and he just kept being super pushy. So I went back into the pizza joint, saying I needed to use the restroom. When I got in, I asked if they had a back door to an alley or something because this guy was being super creepy and I needed a way out. One of the cooks walked me through the kitchen and out the back. Thanks, Chris. Story 31. I got frustrated with a bartender the other night because multiple people had to ask for help about a really drunk guy, and nothing happened. The bartender was even like, yeah, he's bothering me, so why not kick him out? He asked my friend if she'd ever had 8 orgasms in one night. He kept coming up to me and insisting I come over and sit with him and wasn't taking no for an answer. When I was doing karaoke, he stood arm to arm with me, which was really uncomfortable, and he just kept bothering people. He even came up behind a dude and was full-on bear hugging him. The guy was really nice about it at first, then after he would not let go despite being repeatedly asked to, the guy had to get rude about it. We kept trying to secretly signal. We even just started blatantly saying this guy's being weird to the bartender, and she just kept not doing anything about it. Super frustrating to deal with. Story 32. Amazingly, I was in Syracuse for a short work trip, had a drink at the hotel bar, and started chatting with a guy a few seats down. We ended up going to a bar nearby, and my instincts told me something was off, and this wouldn't end well. He ordered me a drink from the other side of the bar, which was odd. I took it to the bathroom and dumped it out, then saw a sign about using a code word to tell staff if you were uncomfortable about something. I went to the bar, said the word to one of the bartenders, and she immediately took me out through the back without a scene and drove me to my hotel. She texted me the next morning to see how I was doing. I often think about her and how kind and selfless it was to help a total stranger in a time of need. ETA. We shared an Uber to the bar. When I disappeared to the bathroom and back to the hotel, he called, texted repeatedly. He was pissed that I ditched him even though I'd only met him an hour prior. Story 33 mid-80s. I went out with a friend of a friend. We went to the drive-in movies. It was at the time that the new orange slice came out. He had an opened can and asked me if I wanted to taste it. I said no, but he kept on badgering me to try it, so I did. One small sip. The next thing I knew, I was waking up. I knew something wasn't right too. I told him I had to use the restroom. I walked in and my eyes were red. Not bloodshot. Not pink. Red. I couldn't get anyone to help me. I had to get back into the car with this guy and have him drive me angrily to my brother's apartment for a family emergency. I had used the payphone to call a friend who wasn't home, and that's when I came up with this plan. I was 17. I did the opposite once. I ordered a certain drink because I was told they were good, and the bartender gave it to me and billed me $400, found out the next day. I then drank the drink and proceeded to roofie myself. Had to file police report next day and get drug tested. Investigation launched. Bar was sued into absolute oblivion and shut down. Owner and bartender arrested. I was young and did not think to sue, but once it hit the papers, everyone else did. Story 34. I haven't. But one time I told a bartender, Mom, it's my wife's birthday, we're all kind of drunk. But this guy at the end of the bar is actively antagonizing my friend, and I really don't want to get involved with her birthday and whatnot. I wonder if there's anything you can do before I call it. Immediately told the guy to GTFO, and started calling bouncers and threatening police. I felt extremely taken care of by that bar staff. I think I tipped 100 on a 50 tap, but there ain't no telling, lol. That was years ago. Story 35. I have worked plenty of doors, different codes, but best was a local dive bar. I was there to look like I was checking ID so the fire marshal would be happy. Kind of place with 3 beers and 4 liquors. So anyone ordered any cocktail was out of place. Anyways, one of my regulars, a female, walked up to the bar and ordered a beer and said her date wanted a double old-fashioned. It took about 5 secs for the whole bar. Put that guy on his out front and took a serious beating. I had to call the cops and fill out reoperates, but all my eyewitnesses saw him assault me first. Classic around and find out. Story 36. I completely froze in the only situation where I could have used something like that. But I was lucky because the bartender saw that I needed help. Then in my early 20s, was in a kind of shady club that opens when others are closing and is open till CO 9 or 10 a.m. There was this old gay boozer who apparently was into short, fat, and hairy hippies. He should seek therapy for this. He first just talked to me, which was fine, but then he started to following me wherever I went and repeatedly asked me if I want to come home to him, what I repeatedly denied. Later in the evening, not so early morning, he repeatedly tried to, getting closer. The barkeeper then saw how this nice fellow tried to reach between my legs in front of the bar and almost reached warp speed while he came around the bar to politely him out and to make sure that he knows he is no longer welcome. As he returned, he came to me and asked, while massaging his right hand, if I need someone to talk and if I want to go to the backstage lounge to come down. He also told me to just ask if I would feel safer when someone comes with me when I go home. The club may look shady and is filled with people who should have went home long ago, but the old punks who run this place have a heart of gold. Sadly, not the so-called spaceship. What could be one of the reasons why they built this safe haven for freaks, outsiders, and friends of mind-altering substances? Pass. I should mention that the people who work there would have acted earlier, and most likely less drastic if they had seen me. You can read my face like a book when I'm stressed. Those for toddlers, with simple words and gigantic letters. But I knew or thought that it could be a good idea to go closer to someone who is sober enough to help me, and instead tried to get away on my own, because of my questionable condition, and a beginning meltdown I had because of the unwanted touchings. The beer, the environment at a concert and in the club afterwards, the long time I was already awake, etc. Probably also didn't help my autistic brain to function as it should. Story 37. A girl came up to me in a bar, grabbed my arms and kissed me on the lips and said, "Hey baby," and winked at me and kissed me one more time, I think to hide my face. I smiled and then saw the guy behind her at the bar scowling at me. I looked at the girl and said, "Hey, how was work?" She turned to the guy and said, "See? I told you he's my boyfriend. Now leave me alone." She went back to her table of girlfriends and she bought our table around. Never saw her again. She never came back to the bar, and I'm glad she didn't because he was there often. But I know how much she appreciated that, and I was happy to do it. Story 38. I've never had to use one myself, but I think bars implementing safe words is brilliant, such as ordering an angel shot or something similar. It empowers people without escalating the situation, and it creates a built-in sense of community safety. I'm curious about how often staff are trained on it, though consistency varies a lot depending on location and management. Story 39. Well-trained staff can make an incredible difference in de-escalating preventing unsafe situations. One time, bar staff saw a guy hitting on me at a gay bar, mind you, and him a girl, and swooped in within like 20 seconds and asked if he was bothering me. Before I could even process what was happening, I can hold my own and handle weirdos, but I was pretty impressed at that response. They'd clearly seen that stuff happen before and had prepared for it. Story 40. The bartender quietly pulled a gun on my date and informed me to back away with them slowly, all the while holding said date at gunpoint until we were out the back door. Story 41. I told the bartender someone was getting roofied there, and I got kicked and cussed out. Told to off and never come back. Got her out of there safe. Gee, I wonder who put it in her drink. Story 42. I was working expo in the kitchen later at night, and when Dylan, our other bartender, went home, it was just Jamie. This girl handed her $1 with something written on it, and Jamie came into the kitchen to have myself and another cook come out and talk to the guy to keep his attention while my buddy walked her to her car. Once she was safe, we told him to pay his bill and leave. We voided her bill and took it on as a store expense. It was worth it. Story 43. I was a checker at a grocery store. A woman came into my line and whispered that man is following me, like shifting her eyes to the customer behind her. I told her not to worry. I checked her out super fast and told her to hurry along. While I was checking him out, I made mistakes which caused me to call over a manager. Held him up long enough, I was comfortable she was safe. Story 44. Different story. A guy who was drunk and delusional at a pool hall played me and my friend and then got confrontational about whether we would play again and make a bet, and accused me of being a big talker, which wasn't true at all, as I knew I was absolutely nowhere on the skill level. A young woman came over and insisted that I try her drink and tell her what I thought. As I did that, she turned on this guy and asked if he was bothering her friend. I guess they were both sort of regulars, and probably she could cause a fuss that would get other people involved, and he just walked off. Story 45. Our local arcade bar has Zelda Master Sword, pieces of paper you can rip off a bigger piece of paper like a help wanted ad that you take to the bar for help. You don't have to say anything, just slide it to a bartender. The paper has the "it's dangerous to go alone" quote, and an explanation of what the sword is for at the bar. Story 46. I asked for an angel shot once. Barkeep asked who. I said the guy in the blue shirt, he's getting a little aggressive. Dude pulled out a Nerf gun and said, "Hey blue shirt, I've got a bullet for you." Story 47. No safe word. But a few years ago I was in Target late at night, and two workers, young ladies, maybe teenagers, approached me to ask if I knew the guy that was following me from aisle to aisle. I noticed him briefly and just thought it was a coincidence. They escorted me to the checkout line and asked if I wanted someone to take me to my car. I stupidly told them no because I worked really close to the exit, and there were people coming and going, so I felt it wasn't a dangerous situation.